You may think of Mercedes as a star today, but after World War II, the company was in financial trouble. But this car right here helped save the day. Hi there, Rick DeBrule with another chapter in the automotive evolution. And of course, I'm here once again at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix. As I often point out, this is a great collection with more than 170 cars. Not surprisingly, we have an awful lot of American iron, but we also have some significant foreign cars, like this car right here, this Mercedes-Benz 170 DA convertible. I'll talk more about this car in just a moment, but first, make sure you like and subscribe down below, and in the comments, let me know what I got right, and of course, most importantly, what I got wrong. I always get something wrong in my research. And if you're a European transplant, what kind of cars did you grow up with? Was there anything like this in your garage? Were you a military kid living over there? I want to know your story. Now, the 1951 Mercedes-Benz 170 DA convertible might look modest, even old-fashioned, but the story of this car is tied directly to the rebirth of one of the most famous automakers in the world, and of course, I'm talking about Mercedes-Benz. To understand why this car mattered, we have to take a step back and look at the history of Daimler-Benz. Now, the roots of the company go back to literally the very beginning of the automobile itself. In the 1880s, Carl Benz built what is widely considered the first practical internal combustion automobile. Meanwhile, Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach were developing their own internal combustion vehicles at the same time. Eventually, those two companies merged. By the 1920s, the combined company of Daimler-Benz was producing cars under the Mercedes-Benz brands. Through the 1930s, Mercedes-Benz established itself as a global leader in luxury cars and cutting-edge engineering. They built graceful sedans and powerful sports cars, and they dominated Grand Prix racing back then. But when World War II broke out, Daimler-Benz, like most German manufacturers, was pulled into wartime production. The company built trucks, they built aircraft engines, military vehicles, but by 1945, its factories were in ruins because of Allied bombing. When the war ended, Daimler-Benz faced a very uncertain future. Germany's economy was shattered, resources were scarce, and many wondered if the company could ever return to building luxury automobiles. In 1945 and 1946, they really only had one realistic option: to revive a car that was designed before the war. And that car was this one right here, the Mercedes-Benz 170. Now, don't get me wrong, American companies were also building pre-war models. But think about this. They had plenty of money they made during the war, and their factories were still in operation. The 170 had first appeared in 1936 as the 170V. Solid, reliable, middle-class car, ladder-frame chassis, simple suspension, four-cylinder engine, all rugged to withstand the rough roads. That was exactly what post-war Germany also needed. In 1947, Daimler-Benz resumed production of the 170V. Shortly afterwards, the 170D, the diesel. That was groundbreaking. Mercedes-Benz was one of the first companies to put a diesel engine into a passenger car back in the 30s. And in an era when fuel economy mattered more than speed, that idea caught on. By 1951, the 170 series was being offered in several variations, including this car right here, the 170 DA convertible. DA stood for Diesel Ausführung, meaning diesel version. Stylistically, the 170 DA convertible still carried the DNA of all those pre-war models, had that upright grille, the flowing fenders, the classic Mercedes star, and recalled the company's 1930s designs. In that sense, it was really a bridge. On one side was the old world of pre-war engineering, on the other was the future Mercedes-Benz. What made the convertible version special, though, was both its practicality and elegance. You know, a lot of post-war cars were simply purely functional in Europe, but the 170 DA convertible, that folding roof, seating for four, had a touch of sophistication and elegance that appealed to professionals, small business owners, and anybody who wanted more than just a utilitarian car. Let's walk around and take a closer look at our Mercedes-Benz 170 DA. Of course, we start with that three-pointed star on the front and that beautiful Mercedes-Benz emblem. As we step back, though, what we see is a very dated style. Remember, this was being built in 1951, very much pre-war styling. Now, I will point out that here at the museum, right next to it, we happen to have a 1934 Chevrolet. And take a look at this styling, right? The grille that's slightly angled back, those big flowing fenders going into the back of the car. Boy, when you compare that to this design right here, they look awful similar, don't they? Now, the reality is that's what an awful lot of people were building back during the 1930s. But this car is a 1951 car, while that car is a 1934 vehicle. But this is the car they had to build. They had to revive it. And if you look at some of the cars that were being built, for example, in England, very common in terms of having that pre-war styling as well. Interesting to point out, the overall length of this car is about 175 inches. Now, if you compare that to, say, a Ford of the time, the overall length of the Ford was about 20 inches longer, 21 inches longer. But the wheelbase is really interesting. This has a 112-inch wheelbase, the distance from the center line of the wheels in the back to the center line in the front. 112 inches. Compare that to a 1951 Ford. It had a 114-inch wheelbase. The significance is that the Ford of its day had an awful lot of overhang going in front of the wheels. This car, well, the wheel was at the very front of the car, giving it much more stability and better handling for its day. Now, in addition to building this body style, you could get the 170 in just about any form you wanted. You could get a pickup, you could get a van, you could get roadsters, you could get limousines, just about anything you wanted, they made available, all built on the same basic chassis. Once again, this car was all about being as utilitarian as possible, making sure they had something for just about everybody, and boy, they pulled it off. Look at this nice looking four-door. We'll open the door very briefly, show you what the back seat looks like. Go inside in just a moment. But once again, a four-door convertible with that pre-war styling. By the way, I have to point out, these turn signals that are on top, these look like they're transplants, probably from a Volkswagen Beetle from much later. This should have had a clear-colored lens, just been a little bit more upright. Mercedes-Benz has built some pretty legendary and amazing engines over the years, but the four-cylinder in this 170 may be one of its most significant. Internally, within the company, this engine was called the OM636. It started off as a 1.7-liter diesel introduced in 1949, but in 1950 it was bumped up to 1.8 liters, made about 40 horsepower, not a lot by today's standards, but enough to power a car that weighed 2,600 pounds. Now let's go back a little bit. Mercedes-Benz was already experimenting with diesels for passenger cars in the early 1930s. In fact, in 1936, they came out with the 260D, which is considered the first production diesel car. That car proved the concept, to be honest with you. It was heavy and it was slow. Move ahead a decade after the devastation of World War II, gas is scarce and it's expensive. Diesel is much more available. So in 1949, they launched the 170DA with the OM636 engine. This engine used indirect fuel injection. You see the Bosch unit right here. That's where the fuel and air are mixed in a separate chamber before getting pulled into the cylinder. Inside that cylinder, the piston would massively compress that mixture, 21-to-1. The compression would ignite the mixture without even needing a spark plug. Now, this car was not quick, but it got about a third better fuel mileage than their gasoline version. And it was solid. These engines could go hundreds of thousands of miles. And this engine didn't just stay in the 170. Mercedes put it just about everywhere. Small vans, delivery trucks, boats, industrial machines. This was a workhorse that powered Mercedes well into the 1970s, especially in utility vehicles around the world. It later evolved into a 1.9 liter, and in the 1960s, well, it was the foundation for the OM615, the OM616, those diesel engines that really cemented the reputation of Mercedes diesels worldwide. By the 1970s and the 1980s, Mercedes diesels really had become icons. Cars like the 240D and the 300D were especially popular, even here in the United States. The OM636 was more than just an engine. It was a foundation. From the 170DA of the late 1940s to the durable Mercedes diesels of the 1980s, the DNA of this engine is everywhere. All right, let's step into our 1951 Mercedes 170DA, but I'll tell you right off the bat as I get in, there's not an awful lot of room for your legs in here. Plenty of headroom. It's actually fairly comfortable side to side, although you have to remember this was a European car, not as wide as a classic American car, so not nearly that width. But the thing that's awkward about this are the pedals where you have the clutch, the brake, and the throttle down below, the gas pedal. Now, I have a pretty wide shoe, but to be honest with you, getting my wide shoe in here is very difficult. There's not much room between the brake pedal and the tunnel for the transmission. I'm sure folks weren't wearing wide shoes back then, but still, it's a little problematic. It's also canted just slightly to the inside. I'm sure it's a combination of the wheel well and everything, but it is just a little bit awkward. It's very much a classic throwback in terms of the styling with this big, huge steering wheel. One of the things I do love about it, though, is the turn signal indicators. To use the turn signal indicators, you have this great little Mercedes emblem in the center, and you just clicked it from one side to the other. It was really cool. This car is comfortable, as I mentioned, but not overly comfortable, although there is a fair amount of room in the back seat. I love the touch of the wood up above, but beyond that, it's pretty utilitarian. I am impressed that it does have a gas gauge, and down below, it appears to have a reserve lever as well. So if you're cruising down the road, you get to the point on the gas gauge where it says reserve, it's probably going to cough, begin to sputter. You reach down, you flick that little reserve. It actually lowers the pickup point in the gas tank just a little bit and gives you probably that last gallon of fuel, just enough to get you where you're going to be going. You do have a single windshield wiper, and I've seen these run. Boy, they don't do very much. If you were driving down the road using that windshield wiper, it kind of goes, doesn't really provide an awful lot of windshield wiping ability. There are two, we'll call them glove compartments, one on this side, one on this side. So you can store whatever it is you need. Long throw for the transmission. It's got a 4-speed transmission. Kind of sloppy, but it could be that it's been after all these years. So once again, it was a nice, comfortable interior. I will say the seats are comfortable, but having said that, there's not as much room as you're going to get in an American car, but there was enough for 2 people up front and 3 reasonably sized people in the back, if you squeezed a little bit. The importance of the 170 series cannot be overstated. It kept Daimler-Benz in business during a period when the company could easily have disappeared. Without the steady sales and the steady income that this car brought for Daimler-Benz, there might never have been a revival of Mercedes-Benz as a luxury brand. While American car companies were coming out with their awesome new post-war designs in the late 40s, Mercedes really wasn't able to capture that new generation until 1953. That's when the so-called pontoon cars with their pontoon fenders were introduced. And they looked right, and they were very successful. And of course, the following year, 1954, they came out with the Mercedes 300 SL. And the future, well, it was on firm footing for Mercedes from that point on. But here's the thing. Without the 170, Daimler-Benz might not have survived the post-war years. And without that survival, there might never have been icons like the 300 SL Gullwing, the S-Class, or the modern luxury cars we associate with that 3-pointed star today. The 1951 Daimler-Benz 170 DA convertible isn't just a car. It tells the story of how the world's greatest automaker rebuilt itself from the rubble of war, and even how a modest 4-cylinder convertible can help lay the foundation for the Mercedes-Benz legend.